Welcome back to the Attack the Rack podcast. Today we are here in the Get to Two Media studios with basketball official Chris Van Wieren. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Attack the Rack podcast. I am your host, Kurt Van Hecken, and you are tuning in to the number one rated podcast on the planet by the people that rated it number one. The Attack the Rack podcast, as always, is brought to you by Get to Two Media. The sponsor of the program today has been a sponsor before in the past. It is the YouTube channel called Chillaxation Sounds. Phenomenal for when you need an extra little help falling asleep. There's sounds for rain, thunder, coffee brewing, windy snowstorm. If you need help falling asleep tonight, go to the YouTube channel Chillaxation Sounds for that extra boost you need. All right, and we are back with another episode of the Attack the Rack podcast. Today we have West Michigan basketball official Chris Van Wieren. Chris, thank you so much for joining the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I was really excited when you first approached me with this opportunity and look forward to discussing topics at hand.
Yeah. You know, we've had a lot of coaches on the program. I thought it'd be unique to get the officials kind of thoughts and things like that.
Yeah, there's a continuity.
Well.
There's a continuity there.
Yeah. All right. So obviously, you're as an adult here now. You're an official. Did you grow up playing sports?
Grew up playing sports. Was a 3-sport athlete in high school.
Okay.
The traditional baseball and basketball, of course, and then I played soccer throughout my high school career. So I was always involved with a season or another. Not like the kids are today, where it's year-round, but we transitioned from one season to the next, and I really enjoyed a 3-sport athlete career in high school.
That's interesting you bring that up because just about every episode we've had, the topic of the multi-sport athlete has come up, and I feel like most coaches are pro multi-sport athlete. When I had Jeff Carlson on the program, head coach at Zeeland East boys basketball here in West Michigan, he's a big proponent of having his kids play at least one other sport other than basketball. He mentioned something too about last year in the NFL draft, like almost every single first rounder when they were in high school was a multi-sport athlete. And I think too, just from like the aspect of just simply having fun, like it is very rare that you're going to, a lot of kids choose to pick one sport because they think that's going to get them a college scholarship and maybe even make them some money someday playing that sport. And that's just, the reality is that's so unlikely. So why not just play multi-sports and just have fun?
I'm an advocate for multi-sport athletes. I think it presents a greater opportunity to develop skill-wise. There's different pressures involved with different sports. I think you have an opportunity to develop a greater sense of team continuity that way. You're not so unilaterally minded. I think there's a lot of pressure from within the household for parents determining and dictating the route which their athletes should go. And as a result, I do see a lot of basketball burnout with youth that I may have officiated at one time or another in their younger years. And to my surprise, they're either not starting as the premier athlete they once were. I also see a lot of injuries occur from repetitive use. One of the biggest advocates I can refer to at the highest level would be Coach Jim Harbaugh, who looks for multi-sport athletes. And of course, baseball is one of his favorites, but there are certain tangible skills that athletes develop from playing different sports at a younger level and enjoying those sports. And there's a lot of pressure on kids nowadays to succeed in only one venue, and some do, of course. For the majority of kids, they're not going to play at a high level in a collegiate setting. And when you get to that point, I think it's okay then to hone in on that particular sport that you've chosen for yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And there's so many, our focus here kind of is basketball, but just like playing other sports can really benefit you in the game of basketball. You look at soccer with spacing, and, one thing Coach Carlson mentioned too is he loves it if his big guys are playing football and playing on the offensive line, and how much better they can get with their footwork and their speed and their quickness by doing so.
I think football and particularly wrestling translate well to the hardwood. There's a certain toughness mentality. I think it's an attitude, and I think those athletes are always a lot more difficult to defend and have a greater amount of success as a team when we're coming off of sport such as football, which requires a lot of mental toughness.
Yeah, and I know this is going to shock our audience, but I am not a doctor. I am not a scientist. But one thing I do hear, and you mentioned this too, is the injury thing. A lot of people encourage multi-sport because of now you're using different.
Well, you have muscle memory,
yes,
muscle fatigue,
yes,
tendon fatigue.
Yes. So I don't have the scientific data to back that up, but that is something that I hear quite often when talking about multi-sport athletes, is that a huge positive of playing multi-sports is using different parts of your body.
Yeah, and I think part of the grind too is today's culture with the amount of distractions from being too immersed in technology, not getting out in the backyard enough. And that's so old school. That probably speaks to the era that I grew up in. But I would encourage that. And everything's got to be so organized now, paid for, and professionally done at such a lower level, from uniforms and swag and so forth to just appreciating getting outside with some buddies and hammering each other in someone's driveway.
Yeah,
which created actually more of a, I would say, a more skilled athlete because of the fact that we were of our own initiative to do it. We didn't have to be told to do it. We didn't have to pay to do it. And I don't frown on that. That's just the era that I grew up in. So.
No, absolutely, same here. And I don't think you see that today. Just the old, I'm going to call up my buddies and we're going to go play 3-on-3 in my driveway, or we're going to go to the park and play 5-on-5. You just don't see that.
We would grab buckets of balls and play 500 in the outfield.
Yeah.
And some of us would come away with a black eye because we missed the ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
All right. So, so obviously you're a multi-sport athlete in high school. What did you do after high school? What was your next step in life?
After high school, there was a period of time where I was trying to understand what I wanted to do. My heart told me I should become a teacher, and I loved athletics. And but an opportunity came, believe it or not, while I was officiating a team from Detroit who had come to visit West Michigan and go up against some of West Michigan's teams. So I was a kid out of college. I had the whistle on, and one of the coaches that was involved with a team from South Detroit was Mel Pfeiffer, and I'll never forget it. He was the regional president of Allstate Insurance Corporations over on the other side, and he asked me, well, what is it that I did besides officiating? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I'm in the process of trying to find a vocation. And so he offered me right then and there to become an Allstate agent, which I did. And trajectory looking forward. I did that for 23 years before selling my agency and going the independent agent path. So that was my vocation. No regrets, but something deep down inside tells me I actually want to get back into teaching somehow. But it doesn't have to be formally in a school setting. And so there are other opportunities that I'm pursuing at this point.
All right. Well, hey, if any of our listeners are interested in getting in contact with you about some insurance stuff, what insurance are you in?
I own my own independent agency. It's Beech Tree Insurance Group, spelled with 2 E's, BEECH treegroup.com. You can reach me at chris@beechtreeinsurance.com. And you can call me direct if you want to speak with me personally about officiating opportunities or insurance. 616-403-7715.
All right, and I will certainly put all that contact info in the description for this podcast. So, all right, so let's get into kind of the topic at hand here, and that is officiating. I know you as a basketball official. Are there any other sports that you officiate or have in the past?
Yeah, I did some soccer officiating out of college, along with some inadvertent basketball officiating. I officiated at the high school level, and eventually my vocation took over, and I got married and kind of walked away from that, only to revisit it after I did some coaching and so forth with my kids as they were growing up for the AAU circuit and the travel baseball. And once that settled down, my wife suggested that I get back into it. And God bless her, I decided to go for it. And next thing you know, I'm so passionate about it that every year I'm trying to get better and strive for a higher level of officiating.
Yeah, and how as an official do you go about getting better as a player? Obviously, you get better by working on your ball handling, working on your shooting, and there's an infinite amount of opportunities for you to do so. Most simply, just grabbing a ball, going outside in your driveway, and working on your skills. As an official, you can't really do that. So, as an official, how do you work on improving your officiating?
So, let me start from the beginning. My first game after I joined and signed up through the MHSAA, official in Michigan. You can find all their information online on how to become official. And once you've satisfied that criteria, then they suggest you seek out an association in your area. And in that association, there are signers, and they understand the level of officiating that you're getting into. You can begin your officiating career. Those assigners will usually assign you some junior high stuff to begin with to get you acclimated with it. My first official game was through a recreation department, and I officiated a 5th and 6th grade girls basketball game. I showed up 45 minutes before the game, nervous as could be, didn't know what to expect, hadn't been in any kind of a rule book, just kind of knew the game from when I played it. And the conclusion of that game was I was driving home, and I knew right then and there I was hooked. From a simple game, I could not be happy enough that I got into it. And so I had a passion for it. I discovered this passion that really bloomed more so than it did earlier in my life. And so I've taken that, and I've taken that baton and ran with it. So let's fast forward. So I got assigned middle school games, boys and girls, 7th and 8th grade. And in those games, let me tell you, that's a petri dish. You're going to get everything. You're going to see the unorthodox plays. You're going to see the unimaginable plays. You're not going to know how to adjudicate them. You're going to get baptized by fire at that level. And what it does is it allows you to be immersed in the pressure of the situation. The parents they think their kids are going D1, they've all got their video cameras out, and their tripods, and they're screaming and yelling, travel. And so it teaches you discipline, self-control under pressure, communication, a lot of valuable life skills that you can take with you outside of the court. And eventually you move on from that level of competition, and you are then put forth before an assigner or of a conference, and they want to see how you officiate. They'll come and evaluate you. They'll sit in the stands with a checklist, and they'll say, yeah, he's ready for high school basketball, perhaps at the freshman JV level would be the next step. And so you get inundated with a plethora of those games. And at some point, based upon how many years of experience, they'll evaluate you again and start seeding you some varsity contests.
Okay, so one thing you just were talking about here, something just stood out in my mind. You mentioned you start with, junior high games, which makes complete sense. That it sounds like common sense. But then when you started talking about, the game itself, and I wonder, is it actually, even though you start at the middle school level, is it actually easier to officiate higher level, varsity, because the game is better? Does that make it easier to officiate rather than the junior high game, which is, it's not always the best basketball? So there's less importance with the junior high stuff, but is that actually more difficult than the more important game, the varsity game?
The lower level basketball teaches you to see a lot of crazy plays. And so you're able to better adjudicate those. And what you'll find is that at a higher level of basketball, as you progress, the athleticism is more on display. The kids are more athletic, skilled, able to perform basketball moves and things that are easier to see. And so you're able to adjudicate those better. So I would say, yes, the higher the level of basketball, the faster the game becomes, the easier the calls are being able to make, because you're not inundated with what did we just see on the court now? And you're able to, a foul's a foul. You can see more clarity in the skill of the players. And so it's actually easier to officiate in that respect. Now, there's a lot more rules that come into play, and a lot more game management that comes into play. But from the standpoint of a foul's a foul, that's easier to see.
All right, so you talked about kind of the process of becoming an official. You start with reaching out to the MHSAA, and then they kind of, walk you through what's next. But at some point, you have to, I would assume, you have to be taught, how to officiate. I mean, I know it's very integral, like positioning and, how you do signals, how you report a foul, all that stuff has to be taught to you at some point. Is there a class, or how do you learn that?
So here's what I decided to do for myself, is I needed to make sure that I saw a lot of plays. So in doing so, I would average 160 to 170 games in the summertime by attending major university basketball camps for the AAU circuits, traveling to Fort Wayne and outside of the state, just so I could get a repertoire of 15 to 20 games in on a weekend. Now, a lot of those games are with a two-man crew, when a three-man crew would probably be better served. However, it was a matter of seeing plays, getting acclimated with the speed of the game, getting as much experience as I possibly could get in prior to attempting to advance my game. And that advanced my game significantly, from on-court fights to fantastic basketball, to dealing with coaches' demeanors, learning how to apply the rules, learning what I have in my arsenal to apply the rules. And so that experience alone was significant to the advancement of my game. What happens at some point, you either decide, hey, high school is a great experience for me, but I desire more. I want to take it to the next level. If you get to the next level, what's required of you is you have to start attending camps, officiating camps that are built around high levels of basketball. So what happens is a university or a locale will invite a circuit to come in, the Nike Eyeball Circuit, in Chicago with some of their major Division I contests where AAU players are coming to show their wares from all over the country. At all levels, the coaches are there with clipboards from Division I, II, and III, looking for players to recruit. And what you have is your officiating camp is being used on those courts. So you have to pay. You have to pay money. You're paying to get better. So you're investing in yourself. You're investing your time. You're going outside of your comfort zone. You're immersed with other great officials around you. You're measuring yourself up. And so I did 4 years of that before I was finally rewarded with a collegiate basketball experience in the men's mechanics. But it was a lot of hard work and a lot of grind. And so the baptism by fire, the uncomfortable situations, the travel, the money was all worth it to me. So the pain was there. You heard the phrase, no pain, no gain. That's applicable to officiating as well.
Yeah. If you are, and I know there's an official shortage right now, and we can get into that here in a minute. But let's say there is an official or somebody who's wanting to get into officiating, and I know some people that are. And those people are probably going to be listening to this podcast. But they're thinking, well, I don't know exactly where I'm supposed to stand on the floor. I don't exactly know the actual mechanics of how to report a foul. I don't exactly know my zone that I'm supposed to be looking at. How do you go about learning that stuff?
You watch other officials and you steal.
Okay, so there is no class you take. You just it's on you to figure it out.
You stand in front of a mirror.
Okay.
And you steal what you can steal from other officials. I've changed certain mechanics that I was comfortable with, but I liked how someone did it better.
Yeah.
It looked more authentic. It had more impact, and it was more assertive. At these camps, we have clinicians, and these officiating camps, from trying to get assigned to Division I, II, or III, or just an introductory camp for officials designed just to get better at the high school level, they're available to you.
Okay.
They will actually pull you aside, position you on the court, take you by the arm, and move you over here. This is where I need you to be at the C position, at the trail, at the lead.
Okay. So it's learning by doing, not necessarily, there's not like okay, I want to be an official, and to do so, I need to spend a Saturday sitting in a classroom learning the mechanics.
Yeah, sure. It's a combination of everything.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some classroom time. There's some classroom study. There's a lot of film study. So what's really great about that is there's a pause, rewind, and we're observing officials at the highest level, and we are all making mistakes. So you're trying to get better, but everybody, nobody's perfect. We officiate one play at a time. What I find and drives my family crazy is I just can't watch a basketball game anymore. I have to DVR them because I have to pause and rewind and slow it down and watch where an official sets up, watch how he delivers to the table, see what his demeanor is with the players if it's an uncomfortable play, observe his demeanor with the coaches. How does he report to the table? Where is he positioned on the floor? How could he? Was that a foul? Everyone's screaming for a foul, but upon review, it wasn't a foul. And I called outside of my primary. I didn't trust my partner. I thought I saw what I saw. And I went fishing in his pond. And I'm going to hear from him at halftime for it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come right back with more of the Attack the Rack podcast. Realtor Ryan has been a real estate agent for over 20 years and is ready to help you with all your real estate questions and needs. Realtor Ryan has helped me in my process of learning about real estate, and he can help you too. If you have any questions in real estate, ring Realtor Ryan. Wow. I mean, as you're talking to me about how you get better at it, and the time you put in, and the way you watching film, it sounds a lot like coaching.
It is in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
it is in a lot of ways.
So currently, what levels are you coaching? Or I'm sorry, officiating.
So I've worked my way into several conferences. I officiate the men's mechanics.
Well, what is the men's mechanics?
There's men's mechanics and women's mechanics. So when you get to a level where you're these assigners want you on staff, you have to decide for yourself, do I want to go the women's basketball route or the men's basketball route? And it's so funny because at the same time, after 4 years of putting in men's mechanics, I attended one's women session, officiating camp, and I was asked to be a part of their staff as well, so I had a choice to make.
You can't do both?
The rules are different. So there's some difference in the rules. The games take place at the college level on the same days, usually Wednesdays and Saturdays. The travel and the timing, it's just too much to take on. It's been tried, and it hasn't been very successful, having spoken with several of my assigners. So I decided to go the men's mechanics route. I just find the game to be more of a finesse game. It suits my personality better, and I like the speed of the game. And the higher level of basketball, I'm more engaged. With a faster paced game.
All right, so you're into the collegiate level now. You still do quite a bit of high school?
Have a full high school schedule. Love to be on the court. Do Saturday mornings kids stuff. Do Division III and some Division II basketball. And all on the men's side. But I just enjoy being on the court and working on my craft and trying to improve my game and officiate one play at a time. And I've learned that despite the level of basketball that you're involved with, a foul is still a foul. The play is still the play. It just takes place at a lower to a higher level. And every team and every coach deserves a good official. And so I tell myself, I self-talk myself, this is going to be a lower level game, but these kids and these parents and these coaches put a lot of time and money and effort into making this happen, and they deserve an official who's engaged and who wants to be there and wants to call a good game.
Here in the state of Michigan, most often high school basketball is played on Tuesdays and Fridays. We're sitting here on a Wednesday. I'm assuming you had a game last night?
I had a game last night at the high school level, varsity level. As an official, I take pride in what I do as far as trying to know something about the game before I show up for the game. So I look up and I see who are the head coaches, who are the teams competing, what are their records, what might I expect if I can find some huddle film on one of the two teams. And it just so happens the teams last night were, we had, it was 12-3, and then we had an 8-6 team. And so going into the contest, I assumed the 12-3 team will continue their winning streak, and in fact led the entire game. Playing at the opponent's gym, it was a slower paced first half. The team that was supposed to win was up throughout the entire contest until they crept back into it with some turnovers, transitioned nice buckets, hit some threes. They're down by 2 points with seconds remaining in the game. The girl hits a three from the corner. We abruptly get a timeout at 4.5 seconds to go. The team that was 12-3 brings the ball down the court, shoots an exasperated shot, doesn't go in. The underdog wins. And that's the fun for me, is a closely, hotly contested competitive game because I can stay engaged and I'm more into the game.
I can see that. I'm sure you've officiated so many games over the years. I'm sure you've been a part of a handful of, crazy games that come down to the wire, buzzer beaters, major upsets, things like that.
Those are a lot of fun. The close contests, the games that are highly competitive are the most fun for us as officials. You tend to lose focus when there's 20-point spreads, right? And the thing you have to realize is you can't take a play off, because when you take a play off, that's when something happens and you're not ready for it. You need to expect the unexpected. There was a time where I took a play off. The other team is getting beat soundly. And I had a moving screen right in front of me that I didn't see. I was off ball. I was watching a different matchup. It was in my primary. And it was a vicious moving screen. Clearly, a team control foul. And I didn't put a whistle on it. And I was in a lot of trouble for that. I had an assigner show me this play. What did you have on this? What was the reasons why you missed it? And honestly, if I'm true to myself, I was disengaged. I was clock watching. How many minutes do we have left? The score is a disparaging score. And so I took a play off and learned my lesson. That was a play that resonates with me. Another play that resonates with me is we failed to pick up on some jaw jacking with other teams previous in the game. We weren't our antennas were not up. We weren't aware to it, and ultimately it ended in a fight on the court. We had to call a game. This is a game that was out of state at the AAU circuit, of course. Those games tend to be a little bit, let's say, there's less composure there. And so those are the moments. It's not so much the game itself that I'm gleaning or taking away. It's how did I manage the game? It's the dead ball officiating. So you're looking for a fun play or a significant play. Of course, the last second shots are always great. Do you have the guts to call the foul? Do you have the guts to call the foul? I'll never forget James Breeding calling a foul in that Auburn-Virginia game in the corner on a 3-point shot from Virginia. He called the three, called the foul, which enabled Auburn to go to the line. I believe they tied it up at that point. The kid made all three, and I think we went to overtime in that game. but you got to have the guts to make the call. You just got to call what you see, and that's what they look for in officials, being able to put aside the emotions, the intensity of the game, being focused on your craft and what you do best. And so those are the kind of plays that I take away. Those are the most fun for me, not necessarily there's some great plays. And I let the players know it too.
You know what? You mentioned having the guts to make a call. You know, one thing that I've never understood is the cliche that is thrown out there quite often, and that is you can't make that call at that point of the game. I don't get that. I don't care. I don't understand why, no matter what point of the game, the rules are still the rules.
If there's a second on the clock, the game's still engaged. If the first second ticks, you're on call. And no matter what time is left in the game, there's no such thing as, from an officiating's point of view, how could you call that at that point in the game? Well, I would call that in the first quarter of the game or the first half. I would call it in the second half, without question. Now, there's a certain number of plays that you let go. The thing that I hear the most is, oh, that's a travel, or that's 3 seconds, or that's a foul, ref. But it's a game management that you learn to manage. Was that extra step, did that really impact the game as we're coming over half court, when there's no matchup, when teams are setting up? Did that really disadvantage the defense? Was that really worth the call? Are you going to call a half-step travel on a player coming up? No. We choose to pass on that. That's called game management.
Okay. Here in the state of Michigan, there is a narrative that we have a official shortage. Why do you think that is? How can we maybe get more people involved and try to get more people to officiate?
I think there's a persona of disruly fans, blurting out unpleasantries towards officials. I think there's a disrespect element that's the narrative out there. I think, despite that, my best understanding of what I think is going on is there's a shortage of officials, but there's a shortage of officials perhaps because guys are getting into it for the wrong reason. A lot of guys are getting into officiating for work, and that's okay. When it comes time to feel the pressure, when there's animosity from the fans, when there's coaches yelling at you, that's an uncomfortable moment. How do you handle that moment? Do you give in to, I can't take this anymore, I'm getting out? Or I don't even want to get into it because I know that's what I'm going to expect? You're always going to have a level of adversity going into these games as an official. Just like you are a coach, just like you are a player, deep down inside, I'm passionate enough that I actually enjoy that. Does that sound strange? I enjoy that adversity. I enjoy the heat. I enjoy getting yelled at. I enjoy the uncomfortable nature of the game when I may have made a bad call. And I will admit I made a bad call. But do I have the ability to move on? I self-talk. Okay, you really screwed that one up. Everybody saw it. Are you going to hang on to that and let that affect the rest of your game, or are you going to move on? And so I think a lot of people don't have the thick skin it takes to officiate these contests. And now they want, fanfare aside. There's an element of the fan base that does need to taper their expectations of officiating. And the thing is, the old cliche is, well, I've got a shirt in my bag for you, put it on, let's go. Well, I wouldn't want to do his work either. I don't know what he does. But if I tried to do what he does, I'm probably not good at it either. So I understand that reluctance to want to get into an environment of that nature. I understand that. And I think that's part of the reason why individuals are so reluctant to get in.
Yeah, and I think that it's probably, like you said, you move on. I think that's probably, I would assume, easier when you're hearing fans yell at you, but it might be a little bit more difficult when you're interacting with a coach. How do you go about handling coaches when there is some confrontation?
Well, there's two rules of thumb with that. There's either a comment or there's a question. If the coach has a comment, that's the most frequent type of coaching that you hear. Interjecting his opinion on the play. But if he has a question for you, you need to acknowledge that. You need to acknowledge the coach has a question. You need to make sure that you address that question. And the best way to do that is, in my opinion, is to acknowledge what you just saw, to give him the time of day. He just wants a piece of you. Give him that piece of you. Now, don't break into jail, but if he has a question, you owe him the respect to address his question. And that could be simply, Coach, I hear what you're saying. I see what you saw on the play. However, I saw it from a different angle, or my partner had a great look at it. Yes, I clearly understand where you're coming from. I acknowledge you. And we're working hard for you tonight, and move on. Just keep it brief. Keep it brief. Acknowledge the coach. Take time to go out there and to listen to what he has to say. And it's easier to agree with him because he's got a certain point of view that he sells. He's fighting hard for his team. He wants to win. Some of these guys' jobs are on the line now. That's the level I'm at. They're getting paid to coach. And so there's a whole lot more going on with an athletic director who is in charge, who picked this coach. This coach's job is on the line. He gets paid to coach. He doesn't teach and coach. He's just coaching. So there's a lot more at stake there. So you owe the dignity to the coach. But if he makes a comment, there's a lot of comments and they're frequent. You just maybe nod your head and move on as you're running past. So that's kind of the demeanor, the standpoint, the approach you need to take as an official.
Is there one call that stands out to you that is like the toughest call to make? For me, as someone who's watched a lot of basketball, who's sat on a lot of benches as a coach, I tell you one thing that I find it so hard to be able to tell in the live heat of the moment action is the charge or block call. For me, that would be it's very hard for me to determine. Is there a call for you that you feel like is, or maybe a lot of officials find to be the toughest call to make?
The consensus is they call it a blarge, right? That is, in fact, the toughest rule to adjudicate as officiating. Moving parts are allowed laterally. Are you in a legal guarding position? One of the toughest calls I find personally to make is when the defender has walled up and he's legal or she's legal, and they've been there in that position of defense for seconds, and now we've got someone charging the hole with the basketball, and they do a Euro step around that individual who's set up, and they clip them, and that individual goes down. There was enough contact there where that individual goes down. Who initiated the contact? The offensive player initiated the contact. A lot of guys want to call that a blocking foul because the defender didn't allow themselves or didn't put themselves in a position to legally torso up with that individual going to the rack. But my point of view is who initiated the contact. And in this case, in that scenario, I'd probably go with a charge call. But there's so many moving parts. And here again, I'll go back to seeing a lot of plays. This is why I go to a lot of these AAU circuits, why I attend a lot of camps, why I watch a lot of film, slow-mo it down, rewind, watch how that defender is positioned up. There are 3 rules of thumb. Officiate the defense, call the obvious, and stay in your primary. If you do that, you'll get a high percentage of those calls right.
All right. Well, you know, Chris, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here today. You know, like I said, I've had a lot of coaches in the program, and I thought it would be fantastic to get the perspective of an official. So thank you so much for being here. Now, there's a way that I like to end the program. It's with a couple of questions. You know, most often it's 2 of the 3 ask 3 questions. Most often 2 of the 3 are related to basketball, because up until this point with the podcast, a majority of the connection I have with the guest is basketball. And then there's a third question that I ask that's more specific just to you. So the first question: who are your 5 favorite basketball players? That's favorite 5 favorite players, not best players in your opinion. Your 5 favorite players did never have to even have played in the NBA.
I'm going to go old school on you.
I like it.
I'm going to go with Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. I'm going to go with Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, and we'll say my man Jawan.
All right, interesting 5th choice there, just based on kind of the state of the Michigan basketball program right now. But no, all excellent choices. I find my list to include mostly players from the 80s and 90s as well. How about 5 of your favorite basketball movies? I always let my guests know. I know it's maybe a little bit tough to come up with 5, but how about 3 to 5 of your favorite basketball movies?
First one that comes to mind would be Hoosiers. Love the style of basketball then. Love the simplicity and the pure basketball mechanics back then. I love that era of basketball. Most entertaining movie. And the other one comes to mind is White Men Can't Jump. Right? That was a real big hit when it came out. And I don't know if these are movies per se as much as they pique my interest. I really enjoyed the story behind, I believe it was 1978 and 79, the whole cheating scandal with Boston College. And the dynamics of the basketball back then. That story was most riveting to me. I'm not a big sports movie guy. I don't gravitate towards that. And then the other one I believe would be the other scandalous, the Donahue, Donahue, the officiating.
I was gonna actually bring that up to you off air here. After
I think those were 30 for 30s, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, they were I'm not sure about the Boston College one, but the Tim Donahue one was that was on Netflix. I think there might be a couple different ones, but the main one, the more popular one, is on Netflix, and there's also one similar to the Boston College one. There's one from on Netflix about a point shaving with the 94 Arizona State team. That was really good that you should check out too. But yeah, that Tim Donahue one, that was fascinating to me because I remember certainly obviously when that happened, and the narrative was that he was literally cheating and he was making calls to favor
point spreads.
Yes. So in a way, point shaving, I guess. But when you watch that documentary, that's not what he was doing. What he was doing is he was taking information that he was given to. They have these meetings before the games with NBA officials, and the NBA officials tell the officials of the game, here's some things we want you to focus on tonight. And then he's now taking that info and then passing that along to, whoever he was in cahoots with. And then I believe he was also gambling on the games himself. So obviously wrong, immoral, against the rules. Should never have happened. He should never have done any of that. But what's interesting is he was not making calls to favor, at least he says he wasn't.
And in fact, there wasn't a lot of intentionality there as much as there was suggestions. And that's why I've never, I'm not a big NBA guy, right?
Yeah.
But that is a fascinating film.
It is.
I would encourage you, if you have not watched any of what I've suggested, please do so. They're riveting in their own way.
Yeah, and he gave that example too of, okay, we were about to officiate a Lakers game. NBA officials come in and say, hey, we've gotten this video from Phil Jackson. He's showing clips of Kobe Bryant attacking the rack and not getting calls. So, hey, tonight we want you to make sure you're really focusing and making sure every time Kobe goes to the rack, they're not saying make up a call, but they're saying you better make the call.
Look, we need to protect our superstars. They're our highest revenue generating players in the league. They deserve an extra element of grace when it comes to getting a call or a phantom call. And so you see that to this day. There's some expectations of certain players because, let's face it, this is a multi-million, if not billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you're protecting your key chess players. And so there is an element of what I would call favoritism as far as how those games are adjudicated and officiated.
Yeah, and then certainly now he knows that, hey, we're going to be calling a lot of fouls for Kobe. So Kobe's going to the line 18 to 20 times tonight, which means the Lakers are probably going to win. Well, the point spread's this. More than likely the Lakers are going to cover. I'm going to place a bet on the Lakers, and I'm going to tell the guys that I'm in cahoots with who are giving me X amount of dollars per game to give them info on. And that's where, he got himself into trouble. But, he claims he did not adjust the way that he officiated in order to win these bets. He was just adjusting the way he was officiating towards how the NBA told him to do. And he's got evidence to back it up because year in and year out, he was always, despite doing this, he was one of the highest rated officials. So it's a fascinating story. Highly recommend it. All right, last question for you. And again, this third question is always specific to my guest. I know you are a huge college football fan. I know you are a huge Michigan football fan. Who are 5 of your favorite all-time Michigan football players?
Ooh. Rick Leach, Anthony Carter.
Starting out old school.
Yeah. How about Hutch? The Hutch.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, he is.
Loved watching him play recently. Let's go. Favorite. How about Jimmy Harbaugh? Was fun to watch.
Okay, sure. A little before my time, but
and then I want to go with Anthony Thomas.
Okay, the A Train.
The A Train.
Yes.
The A Train was just a bully back
Oh
there.
man, he was. Sometimes I feel like his name gets kind of forgotten about a little bit when you're talking about all the amazing running backs that Michigan has had. But yeah, phenomenal player. It's great to watch. All right. Well, hey, Chris, again, thank you so much for being here. Definitely enjoyed the conversation, and we are definitely going to have you back here on the Attack the Rack podcast to talk about anything and everything.
Appreciate the time. Thank you for having me.